the object of the discussion. So, just flip it. Okay. So the object of the discussion is in costing, the most important problem is identifying what to solve in the question. So once you know what to solve, you'll be able to understand how to solve it, right? Because luckily it's like extension of mathematics where you have to populate certain numbers. Okay. In terms of the weightage, one question which we are expecting is a combination of overheads absorption method along with ABC. So that segment, one question could be coming. And normally one from process costing, one from joint and byproducts. So these three together, there is an expectation that you get at least 20 to 25 marks. This is one segment. Now, apart from that, the classic material, labor, and I would say cost sheet, cost reconciliation, another 20 marks. So these are easy to score topics. And apart from this, your marginal costing, budgetary control, and also your standard costing together another 25 marks. And rest of the topics, your chapter one and all the methods of costing together balance. So it's important for us to go in buckets. Okay. Now, again, you know how to solve the problems, but most of the time it will become very difficult for you to understand what is being asked. So I think all of you have one or the other question paper on MTP or RTP. Okay, let's quickly you can pick up any question paper which you might have with you. So can you tell me what is being asked in each question? What is being asked?
So
no, get to the descriptive. Get to the descriptive. So can you quickly tell me what is being asked in the respective questions?
Question one, they ask total cost per batch and minimum fee per student in a batch, and the what time is the fee charged from each student. The main class.
So what topic is this?
It's a batch cost.
Okay. So what exactly is the object of this question?
To find out the cost for each batch, charged to each student.
So when you look at this a question like this, there are two things. One is what happens when it is operating at the total capacity. When the batch operates at the total capacity, the fee per student is the minimum. They're trying to find out the optimum scenario between a combination of quantity and fees. At what level of students, how much fees we should be charged. So the first two questions, the part one part of the question is with the intent that the batch is fully occupied. This is one. Second, the second scenario is what if the batch is 80% filled and still the institute aims to achieve 25% margin. So here, lesser students, there's more profit, which means the average fee per student should be significantly higher than what is being asked. So 1 and 2 are straightforward. This is something which you have to calculate. So combination of this, you should be able to identify what are the, for example, at simpler level, if you want to understand this as a framework, the total revenue is X. When you get 100 students and let's say 20,000 per student. Now, what is the combination when you get 90 students? What is the fees? When you get 80, what should be the fees? When you get 70, what should be the fees? So this range in your mind, if it's clear, the calculation range, number of students and the fee, if this is clear, you'll be able to quickly arrive at the answer. So most of the questions are linked around this when it comes to batch costing. Kushal, can you pick up one question from whatever paper you're looking at? Any question?
This they are asked to calculate the hourly rate of wage if he gets placed in higher state premium scheme.
So what exactly are they asking in this? What are they trying to figure out?
They gave the portion when for the details for the enrollment, and then the same employee will paid in different premium scheme and what it is having.
So why are we doing this? What is the objective of this particular question? In questions like various types of methods in hourly rates and all of this, what is the intent of this in labor-based questions?
They are asking us to assume which bonus in which method will company will have the least funds and employer will also have more getting paid as well.
So the nature of the questions when it comes to labor is X amount of work needs to be done in Y amount of time. Okay, you need to think about this framework. The work is defined and it should take so much time. X amount of work needs to be done in Y number of hours. This is what you have to search for the question. Over and above this, for example, if X amount of work gets done in 90% of Y, let's say normally it takes 100 hours, somebody does it in 90 hours. How would you incentivize for the 10 hours? If it becomes 120 hours. So basically, you're trying to arrive at what is the optimal time which is taken for a given amount of work, and how are you looking at overtime, or how are you looking at a scenario which takes more time, which is a part of the calculation of the ideal time, and how do you incentivize when it happens at a faster rate. So constantly, when you look at a question, you should be able to arrive at the template where what is the normal time, what is the standard time, what is the predetermined time which is required, and once that is arrived at, how do you incentivize? So that it's all about the premium in terms of how do you give more incentive to someone who is finishing fast. So for that additional time, for that extra time or extra savings, you're giving more rate per hour as premium. So that is what the company is trying to achieve. I'll give you a simple example. Let's say if normal time is 100 hours. Now the company pays 10 rupees per hour. So for X amount of work, you're getting 1000 rupees. So from the company's perspective, to get the work done, it is 1000 rupees. Now let's say the workforce completes that in 50 hours, which means you're paying 5,000. 50 into 100 is 5,000. What is the hourly rate? 10 rupees. 50 into 10 is 500 you are paying. So normally you should pay 1,000. This time you are paying 500. But if you pay only 500, there is no incentive to the employees, right? So that is why companies are looking for methods where, since we have saved this 50 hours or 500 rupees, how do we incentivize? Now for this 50 hours, or for the savings of 50 hours, can they pay 20 rupees per hour instead of 10 rupees? Should they pay 20 rupees per hour? Yes or no? For the balance 50 hours saving as premium, can they pay 20 rupees per hour? Why?
Because it motivates employees to work more efficiently.
Now, what will the total cost if they pay 20 rupees per hour for the savings in time?
So the total cost will be into price.
What is the total cost in this case? If they pay 20 rupees per hour. So what would the company get again? It's not loss. You understand this, right? So when you're trying to incentivize, it should not be a scenario where the companies pay more than what it is, more than the original scenario, right? So this is how you have to think. When the formula is designed, it is definitely to incentivize the time saving for sure. But overall, the focus is on the company, right? As a company, you're doing this method for the company. You're not doing this you're not getting into a morality crisis of how the employee should be compensated. You're looking into a structure where the company tries to incentivize people who work hard, right? But it should not be at a cost which is higher than the normal scenario. If the company has to pay more than 1,000, the normal scenario is even better than this scenario, right? This is exactly how you have to constantly think when you practically apply. The questions which will be coming in the main exam, tomorrow's exam will be largely practical in nature. So this is how you should look at any question linked to labor. What is the normal time which is required? How much time is being saved? You think about it. If it happens in normal time, this is the total cost. Now in this method, you're incentivizing. Is it more than the regular way? If you think the company is paying more, then you should look at it critically. unless it creates more space and more time per order where this 50 hours is used far more productively, it cannot afford to pay the same. It cannot afford to double the rate per hour. Right? You understood this? You can check practically while doing this. Okay, this is what it will cost for the company to do it normally. And in this scenario, if I'm paying so much, is there still a benefit to the company? The whole benefit should not be transferred to the employees, right? The saving, something should be saved for the company also. You have to look into this perspective. One question from your side. Any question which you think is tricky?
So it's about standard costing. Here they ask us to calculate material cost variances, labor cost variances, fixed overhead cost variances, and using variable overhead cost variance. And they have given some data.
So now, what is the concern when it comes to standard costing? What is your normal concern when you have to calculate any of the variances?
So like, we have to choose these inputs. What should be the standard quantity? What should be the revised standard quantity when it comes to material cost, finding material variances? Whereas if we are calculating fixed overhead variances, we have to determine which is the budgeted hours in the. So mostly those are the major problems that I face in doing standard cost.
Fair enough. So see, one of the things is you have to understand there are three components. One is standard, one is budgeted, one is actual. Now, the budgeted looks like standard, but you need to understand that there's a difference between standard and budgeted. And the comparison largely happens between budgeted and actual, not standard and actual. Now, can you tell me the difference between standard and budgeted? What is standard and what is budgeted?
So budgeted means it is something which is predetermined in the output.
No, difference between standard and budgeted. Difference between standard and budgeted.
The standard is for actual output. We take standard quantity according to the standard output which we get. But for the budgeted, we take the standard quantity as input based on the current standard.
Yeah. Any more responses?
So both are developed standard is where you expect the certain production to be, you expect the production to be, if it's suppose 8,000, you're supposed to be 8,000. And budget is where something it's predetermined something that I'm sure.
Okay, so when you look at variance, the fundamental nature of variance is this. This is how it should happen. Okay, let's say for doing X amount of work, it should take 100 hours and it should cost 10 rupees per hour. Like 100 into 10 is what the company decides because this is ideal, right? This is a standard one. Now, in terms of actual, let's say instead of 100 hours, it becomes 90 hours. Now, in this case, what is the variance? Is the variance favorable or unfavorable? Why?
Well, input has produced list.
Okay, so if you look at it simply, it's favorable. Now, in the standard scenario, we look at 10 rupees per hour. The actual is 15 rupees per hour. In this case, what is the variance? What is the variance here? 5 rupees. Is it favorable or adverse? Adverse. Overall, what is the variance now? Now 100 hours, 10 rupees per hour. Now it has become 90, 15 per hour. So what is the overall variance now? What is the overall variance in this scenario?
Adverse.
How much is that?
By 50.
Tell me the actual because the standard quantity is 100 hours. Standard rate is 10 rupees per hour. Here, 90 hours, 15. So what is the variance now? What is the labor rate variance here?
350.
Labor cost variance. 350 hours, right? Now when you look at the time alone, it's favorable. When you look at the cost alone, it's unfavorable. Overall, it has become unfavorable. Now there could be a scenario where, let's say, in terms of, in the same example, if it's the time is 50 hours, what is the variance? If the time is 50 hours, what is the variance? Come inside. Pushpa, what is the variance this time? Instead of 90 hours, if it's 50 hours, 15 rupees, what is the variance?
It's 250.
Yes, right? You're understanding? So basically, the battle is between standards into standard rate minus actual hours into actual rate. And then you're looking at the variance. Is it favorable or unfavorable? Now, favorable at an hourly level could be different from overall cost variance, right? Rate variance, time variance individually is different. That is not the scenario because that doesn't give you the complete picture. The overall variance is what you have to look into the scenario. Understood? So this is exactly what the company constantly tries to understand in the case of material cost variance, labor cost variance. So your objective is to understand what exactly is the variance and how do you get to the figures. Sometimes the figures are very clear. This is the standard quantity. This is the standard price. Standard quantity into standard price minus actual quantity into actual price. This is the material cost variance. Sometimes the standard quantities are clearly determined. Standard price is clearly here. This is the simplest way, right? Sometimes you should put in some effort to locate this. But fundamentally, this formula has to be very clear. Standard quantity into standard price minus actual quantity into actual price. You have to convert all of this into substituting into this formula. This is one of the variants. So we have material cost variance and labor cost variance. Now, what could be material usage variance? Let's say if we think about material usage variance, what could be the material usage variance?
Standard quantity minus actual.
Now, what are you trying to find in usage variance?
So, I mean, it's the difference between the standard usage and actually what we have used, the material which we have used. And here, when we are multiplying the standard rate, the standard price would be the same. Will be the same.
So this is a good point. You're talking about usage. You're talking about material usage variance. Okay, material usage variance. So what is usage? It's only the quantity. So price gets locked. So what price would you use here?
Standard price.
Why?
This
Why? It could be actual also, right? Why are you using standard price here?
So actually, this is how I remember normally. When we say standard price, like in real life scenario, we are segregating it between the departments in which we are talking about, like the price from the ordering department and the usage from the material ordering department, like the production department. Like when we say production department, the variance has to be found only.
No, I'll make it very simple. Okay, it's very simple. You don't have to see that is right, but we're looking at a very simple scenario. There is material usage variance. There is material price variance. Now, when I say usage variance, what are we focusing on?
usage units.
Okay, so when I say usage variance, how do you arrive at the units? How do you arrive at the variance in units?
Company has given
No, what is the formula to arrive at the usage variance?
standard quantity minus actual quantity.
That's it, right? Standard quantity minus actual quantity. You're only trying to know the usage variance. So the price should be standard. Now let's say material price variance. Now in this case, what would be the formula? Quantity should be.
Actual quantity.
Now when it comes to this,
It's standard price.
Now, why is it actual quantity over there? Why is it standard over here?
Well, it's a price variance, and we are trying to find out what is the price, what is the variance in price according to the current output. When it comes to the standard, we have determined the price. So there's any difference in quantity arises, we get to know the any difference.
Good. So these are the subtle things which you have to remember. In price variance, you're looking at the actual quantity. In usage variance, you're looking at the standard price, right? So this is exactly how you have to determine. Now, there are other things called mix variance, yield variance. There things slightly get complicated. The first thing you do when I see standard costing sum comes to, let's say, 10 marks in MGQ or directly, whatever it is. So the first and foremost thing is you build the templates. Even in the answer sheet, you can write your working notes. In your working notes, you dump the formula list. Normally, whatever you know, just like what is the cost variance, what is the price variance, what is the usage variance, what is the yield variance, and most of the time we'll be able to substitute 2-3 figures. Sometimes you'll be confused between what to use in a particular formula. That could be the scenario. So for you to avoid that, if it's a regular question, if the working note is very clear, you get step marks because they'll know how you're thinking. So there could be a chance that you might miss something. So they elaborate a lot on this. When it comes to MCQs, they're not interested in how you're doing it. They only want to know the answer. They're focused more on the working note part. There you can try to substitute using the options. And you're not actually able to get it. See if you can substitute because it's largely case scenario based. See if you can correlate between two bits together, something like that. So either way, out of 10, my objective is to help you get 4 marks. Whatever it is, you're not leaving. You're coming back with 4 marks. Simple and straightforward, right? So for this to happen, you don't have to know everything. The core formulas, just remember the core formulas like the subtle differences. Where do you use actual price? Where do you use standard quantity? What exactly are you trying to achieve? And especially things like your idle time variance, efficiency variance. This becomes more important. Okay, so this is exactly how you should go about it. The whole objective is what there will be one constant, there is one variable. One thing remains static, one thing changes. So you have to identify when something is constant, are you checking at the standard level or actual level? Normally quantity is at actual level, price are at standard level in most of the formula. Exceptions you have to determine, and once you make a list of them, before you go to the exam, if you look at them, you'll be again largely able to tackle 4 marks. 4 out of 10 is what we should clearly look at in standard costing at least. Clear? Because it is complicated, it is going to be tricky. Spending half an hour and getting beat versus spending 15 minutes, 20 minutes by having simpler expectations and focusing on other chapters could be better. The standard, marginal, budgeted will come for 25 marks together or even slightly more. So they're not very comfortable because in terms of population, budget and budgetary control is not more simpler than standard costing because you just have to populate and arrive at various levels. Marginal costing, again, if you involve your mind in a certain way, it involves a sense of common sense, you'll be able to handle. Standard is normally tricky until or unless you would have spent a lot of time, it gets a bit tricky. So these 25 marks, even if they want to tighten the question paper, even if they want to increase the difficulty significantly, you need not worry too much and you can handle this. This is one thing. Clear? Now, you saw the range of questions. I just wanted to open up in terms of how questions are being asked. The 6th question, the theory question, again, index mapping is a good exercise for you to handle a few things because it's very hard to guess what type of questions will be asked. Sometimes it could be very basic about methods of costing, types of costing, absorption methods, I would say marginal costing. Sometimes they'll get into very deep, which you would have heard for the very first time. The question number 6, nothing much can be done right now, but before going to the exam, if you do the index mapping once, you will be slightly able to answer them. Otherwise, you should be able to handle using the other questions. Okay, if you are good with all chapters, you can skip 6. But if you already have 2-3 chapters, it's better to do index mapping once before you go to the examination hall. Okay, done. Now, in terms of your material, you would have 3 to 4. One is your overheads, absorption costing. Do you have that with you? Joint and byproducts. Cost accounting system. You have all this material. Just check if you have all of them. ఎక్కడున్నా ఆ షీట్స్ వేసుకుంటాం అందులో జాయింట్ అండ్ ప్రైమ్ ప్రొడక్ట్స్ ఓవర్ హెడ్స్ ఉన్నాయి కదా అవన్నీ. So we're looking at overheads, absorption costing. Did you get this material? Overheads, absorption, everything. You have that in it? Yeah, they have overheads in that, or you just separate material.
This has only marginal cost of completion. What is this?
Are these ones? That is overhead. Visibility. Now, okay. Now, one question which we are expecting, potential question could be a combination of overheads, specifically absorption costing, plus activity-based costing. Now, before we begin, what is the difference between absorption costing and margin costing? Very fundamental question. What is the difference between absorption costing?
Period cost. Period costs are not considered in marginal costing.
Okay. So in marginal costing, largely we use marginal costing for decision making. What happens in marginal costing? What is the additional cost for producing an additional unit? To take decisions like that. For example, in our context, let's say mentorship. Now, if we decide that for us to handle a batch of 10 students for 6 months, let's say if it's costing us 90 lakhs. Now, for the 11th student, it won't be 9 lakhs. It could be 5 lakhs or 6 lakhs. Then probably at that point of time, we can look at the additional cost of handling the extra student, because already the rents are observed and all of that. For that extra student, instead of the average cost of 9 lakhs, it could be only 6 lakhs. So the additional cost of having an additional student is 6 lakhs. So probably if you get a deal at 7 lakhs or 8 lakhs, we can take it. So that is exactly how marginal costing is largely used. What is the additional cost of producing an additional unit, whether it is service or in production? That will help you to take decisions. Okay, where fixed costs are already absorbed, you don't have to reattribute because fixed costs are already covered or fixed. Okay, this is the nature of that. So when it comes to absorption costing, it includes all the costs. That is a significant difference. Now, when it comes to overheads, you have two terms. One is allocation and apportionment. Do you need a pad? Just take a pad if you want to sit somewhere very good. Okay, fine. No, I am just taking you through. Pad, yeah, give it a right. Yes. What is the difference between allocation and apportionment? Difference between allocation and apportionment.
So allocation means it is like completely determined. It is attributed.
Yes, very good.
Attributable to that particular department which we are charging it. Whereas apportionment is it's a common cost.
Yes.
We should find the basis in order to distribute it towards all the departments.
Very good. So, for example, the same example. So let's say we have half a dozen flats here. Now, what is allocation trend? Let's say one flat is 70,000, one flat is 65,000. So it's very clear where we can allocate. Now, when it comes to apportionment, let's say mentor cost. Now, if you look at apportionment of any mentor, for example, one of the residential mentors. Now, I cannot allocate the same cost to 311 and 206, right? Because 311 we spend a disproportionate amount of time. So it's not 50-50, right? So when it comes to rent, it's clearly allocated. Electricity, clearly allocated. When it comes to manpower, when it comes to printing and stationery, when it comes to food, it's not clearly allocated. You have to find a basis of apportionment. So costing is all about two things, especially absorption costing. How do you pool all the costs together? So what is the total cost and how do you redistribute it? What is the basis for allocation? The basis for allocation is the most important thing which you have to identify. Okay, this is the difference. Now, overheads can be allocated directly, for example, for the specific department. The apportionment based on common cost. In a factory shop, let's say there are 4 or 5 departments. Based on the square feet, they can be allocated to different departments. Yes. Hello. Yes. Not a good time to talk. Talk to you later. Thank you. So when you're looking at apportionment, one important question or potential question could be when there are production departments and there are service departments. How do you apportion service department costs to production departments? Let's say there are 2 service departments AB and 2 production departments X and Y. So how do you apportion service department costs to X and Y? Did you do this problem? So here the simplest thing is you're directly transferring the service department cost to the production department. Now, what gets complicated here is when the service departments render services to each other. How do you solve it? What is different about this problem? Now, one is production departments are going to absorb the cost of the service department in the normal scenario. Now, in a scenario where the service departments have mutually rendering services to each other, what is different about solving this type of question? How do you solve it?
There's only 2 ways to calculate the cost of the repeated distribution.
So what is the difference? When would you use the repeated distribution and when would you use the simultaneous?
So repeated is specifically mentioned.
No, they will mention, but what is the case study? What is the use case scenario? Anyone? When will be when each of this scenario will be used?
So, continuous redistribution method, there is no certain percentage in the question. Then you will be using continuous redistribution method. In equation method, we know there's an expense that has been taken from the service, but we don't know what is the amount. Then we use the equation method. In step ladder method, it's simple 2-step. One and first department will give the service to another department, and the department
Yes.
is taking service. Its whole cost has been shared in the production department.
So in that case, which department will, let's say there are 2 departments, 2 service departments A and B. How would you determine which department will share the cost first?
The highest
Yes.
service giving department.
Because whichever has the highest, that will first transfer it to Y, and then Y will once again transfer to A and B. This is the scenario. Now, for you to understand this very clearly, you can move to page number 5. There is a small table. Okay, page number 5, corner, summary table of methods. Did you find it? Flip the pages. Next. Yes, that's where it is. Kushal, did you find it? Here on this side. Summary. Let's quickly look at it. Now, in direct method, it ignores inter-service department costs because there is no inter-service departments. It is very simple because you directly allocate the total service cost to the production departments. Next step method, which Kushal has just said, one of the service departments render more services to other. So this is where there is no much decision making. You first transfer everything to one, and from that it will once again transfer to the production department. This is also fine. Now reciprocal method is where you have to put in significant time, where the service departments are rendering service to both of them mutually. So that is when you have to figure out a mechanism where you have to make one of the services zero. So you keep allocating one of the services until it becomes zero. This is one. Or the simultaneous equation method where this is exactly how it happens. So now you create two equations and you do the substitution. So this reciprocal method could be slightly tricky. Did you solve any question from the reciprocal method, for example? Okay, solve it. Now this is a range. So it is important for you to understand. Sometimes if it is clearly mentioned in the question, use the step ladder method or use reciprocal method, it's fine. If it's not given in the question, this is the basis using which you have to solve. The reason why I'm focusing on this is, if they want to make costing tricky, they'll not tell you which method. You'll have to identify which is a suitable method in that. Is that clear? Okay. Now to make this pretty clear, we'll quickly run through these two sheets in just 2 pages, 2 minutes. You'll be able to get the concept clear in your head. Now, we looked at, go to page number 1. Allocation and apportionment of overheads is clear. Okay. Now, reapportionment of service costs. They give their example of department A, department B, service department X and Y. X has 30,000, Y has 20,000. Now, which department should be apportioned first here? X is equal to 30,000, Y is equal to 20,000. Which department? X. So the ratio is given. This is called the basis. You have to find the basis. So X 30,000 is reallocated to department Y. So which becomes around 9,000, right? To Y. So based on this, the additional cost or apportionment of X to Y is once again redistributed to A and B. Okay, this is exactly how you can simply do it using the direct method. In the step method, you create two equations. X is equal to 30,000 plus 0.2 Y is equal to 20,000 plus 0.3x. Here, what would you do in this case? In this reciprocal method, if there are two equations, what would you do?
Solve this equation, we get the amounts of x and y. So
Yeah, how would you solve the equation? What is the fastest way to solve the equation? How would you solve this equation? It's a mathematical thing, right? Quadratic equation. How would you solve it? Fastest way.
We'll be crossing the common values and
Yes, you should figure out a mechanism to remove either x or y, right? You will get a multiplying factor so that one of them can be removed. Either x or y can be removed and you substitute. So that is the way you can do that. Next, absorption rate calculation. So for this, you need to identify the basis. How do you absorb? Sometimes things like machine hours are very, very clear, or square feet are clear. If not, in the other material which is given, you can have a quick look at the basis for which scenario, what is the unit, what is the basis. If you're not very clear about it, just go through that once. You'll be able to identify even if it's not given in the question. Okay, that is where the absorption rate calculation becomes important. So this is a simple one, but if you don't know it, you'll honestly lose marks in the question. Now, treatment of under absorption, over absorption. Can someone quickly tell me what is under absorption? With an example, what is under absorption? What is under absorption? Now, this is a very important question.
actual cost
Hmm.
which has been incurred.
is less compared to the
Maybe
allotted
the
absorb.
budget.
So earlier we have kept budgeted overheads, and we have determined the recovery rate. And later on, we'll be incurring the hours such as machine hours or labor hours with the reasonable base which we have.
Now, can I simplify this again? Under absorption, over absorption. Your concept is right. A simplified example.
Amount incurred versus actual units absorbed. Whatever difference is coming, it's either under absorption or over absorption. Under absorption is actual incurred is more than the absorbed.
Again, once again, tomorrow when you look at the question paper, convert everything into numbers. Don't operate in words. Your mind cannot process words. Simply explain a scenario of what is under absorption, what is over absorption. What are we trying to do?
So like
Budgeted is 5 lakhs, and the actual expenditure is 4,60,000. This is under absorption. If suppose budget is 5 lakhs and actual is 5,50,000, so the 50,000 is over.
Are you sure about it?
Actual is 5 lakhs. Budgeted is 4 lakhs. So this is under absorption.
Isn't she saying the opposite of what you said? Yeah, no, you determine. Again, you have to understand what is under. You think through.
Actual 5, budgeted 4.
What?
This is under absorption.
Hmm.
Actual 5, budgeted 6. This is over absorption.
Who is right?
Now, because budgeted is already determined by the company. It's like 5 lakh is the cost which I will incur. I will
Let's
incur
say
5 lakhs.
when you say okay, let's understand this. Budgeted means already absorbed. Okay, that's it, right? So before the actual happens, it is absorbed. So budgeted is equal to absorbed. Let's use that word. Now the actual overheads is less than absorbed overhead. Now what is the scenario?
And
Actual is less than absorbed.
Yeah.
This is over absorbed. Over.
Now this could make the whole question go wrong. What is your say? Budgeted is 5 lakhs. Actually it's 4 lakhs. What is the scenario here?
Over. Over.
Can you explain now? Now can you explain the concept of absorption?
absorption is already, they are determining the, like normally the company says this is the 5 lakhs expenditure, it has to be incurred and is already shown in the statement.
Already shown, right? The actual is 4 lakhs.
Actually, 4 lakhs.
Now what is
So
this?
the difference 1 lakh is less.
Think clearly. You're saying the company has already absorbed 5 lakhs. It has already absorbed, right? So 5 is here. The company has absorbed 5 lakhs in the statements. The actual is 4. The actual is 4. Is it under absorption or over absorption?
What has company done? It's over absorbed.
It has absorbed more, right? It has already done more.
This one is under recovery. There is
Over
a-
absorption. Yes. Under recovery is over absorption. Yes, you're right. So this is exactly what you have to be very, very, very careful about it. If you if you misread this, if you misunderstand this, the whole sum is gone. Come again. Now explain it once again. It's very important because I don't know who will do it wrong, but I'm sure one of you will do it wrong. Just tell me. Kushal, explain me.
5 lakh is the budgeted and 4 lakh is actual incurred, and so the company has over absorbed 1 lakh.
Yes.
And in reverse, if it's budget is 5 lakhs and the company has what incurred is 6 lakhs, so it has understated or under the
Yes. Okay. So we're looking at it from the past tense perspective. It's already done. Budgeted has happened before the actual, right? Budgeted has happened, or the absorption has happened before the actual. So if the actual is less, more is absorbed. So it's called over absorbed. If the actual is more, you look at like this. This will help you. Now this is budgeted, is 4. Actually it's 5, which means 5 has to be absorbed, but only 4 is absorbed, which is under absorption. So this has to be very, very, very. You do this in your mind, it will be clear. Now, if the actual is more than budgeted, what is it?
It's
Under absorption, right? Clear? For all of you, it's clear? Okay. Now, what would you do? What is the treatment for this under absorption, over absorption? So,
Statement forward results. Supplement the rate of absorption. Which due to abnormal reasons we directly take into costing and
okay. And also, when the difference is very small, probably it can be directly attributed to costing P&L. When the difference is more, then you can add a supplementary rate. This is also another scenario. You can check it in the second page. Okay. Based on the difference, also the treatment might differ. Okay. Done. Now, in terms of missioner rate, how would you calculate the missioner rate? What is a simple formula? Very simple. Missioner rate, because it becomes the basis for apportionment of many things. What is missioner rate?
total expenditure divided by mission.
Missioners. That's it, right? Done. Now we are going a bit deep into the methods. So one is direct method, where there is a logical basis. In the given scenario, you have department X, department Y. So since X is more than Y, you are first logically transferring 20,000 to Y. And then once Y is filled, you are reallocating that to the production departments. Step method. Now, step method, which we discussed, you can start with one of the service departments, allocate it to other, and you repeat it until one of them becomes zero. This is how we can do this. And reciprocal method is where it could be a bit difficult. This is where you can do the simultaneous equation method, which is a quadratic equation, to solve it. There is an example given here, so just go through that. Now, the way it is solved, it's solved in multiple steps. Instead, you can directly go to the multiplying factor method. Multiplying factor method, where you can easily remove one variable, you can directly get to the answer. Okay, is this clear? And the summary is given, right? So reciprocal method is given where there is mutual rendering of services which are significant. If only one of them is rendering more service to the other department, then it will lead to a step method. Otherwise, it's a direct method. Is this clear? So this is only a part of absorption costing. Now, what if it converts into activity-based costing? Now, help me understand what is activity-based costing. What is activity? What is activity-based costing? What exactly is the nature of this chapter? What is an activity?
Like,
what is an activity?
So the company or the organization will have certain activities through which the cost will be increased or decreased. Like the cost will be changed.
Okay. What else? What else? What can someone define activity? What is activity? What is an activity?
The cost center of the
I'm slightly expanding your thought. Now, if you look at the whole of costing, okay, you have material, labor, overheads, cost sheet, and then you have methods of costing, batch costing, process costing. Largely, costing is built for products, right? What is the chapter which is built for services? It's also called operating costing, not operation costing. Operating costing or service costing. But when you define an activity could be a production or service. It could be production or service. Let's say the same example which you are following. Now, mentorship is a service. Now, we can do a costing framework for mentorship as a whole. This is one of the ways. Now, within mentorship, there are 2-3 categories. One is personality development, which is, let's say, what is personality development? The basis here will try to improve some personality, skill building, decision making, problem solving. We want to add all this clarity, confidence, all of this will develop your personality. This is personal development. Second is psychological problem fixing, where people come with certain problems, where our interventions will help the kids fix their psychological problems, which are very different and different. Next is subject level gaps. So if you see different segments, we can categorize this as an activity. Mentorship is a service. Personal development is an activity. Now, within personal development, can have 2-3 things stuck together. Understanding? So, activity could be a cost center. We call it an activity cost group, right? So, for companies, for taking decisions. Now, for example, from mentorship, we have to understand what is that activity which is giving us the highest results. What is the cost incurred for it? What is the revenue for it? What is the activity which is giving the highest revenue for us? What is the cost incurred? What is the so for us to take decision making instead of traditional costing? What is traditional costing? It's simple and straightforward. What is the rent? What are the mentor costs? What are the food costs? What are the overhead costs? What are the other branding costs? It is traditional costing. Now, activity-based costing, we're dividing the service into multiple activities, and then we're attaching costs so that we'll be tomorrow able to take decisions. Now, should we do more activities? Should we convert this into completely personality development school? In life school can become a personality development school, or should we completely get into academics, or should we completely get into skills? So these are different decisions which we can take, right? For that to happen, you need to identify activities that are relevant. Okay. Now, in this lines, let us quickly go through what are the steps. What are the 6 steps in activity-based costing? Again, in a normal question paper, this is not required, but when the question paper gets tough, you have to identify what is being asked. So this is like an incidence where, okay, quickly go through. In activity-based costing, you are identifying activities. In the first step, break down the production or service process into distinct activities. Let's say in our case, we have divided the service. In this case, the example is machine setup, inspection, order processing, right? Now, once you separate these activities, group similar activities into an activity cost pool. As I said, let's say in personal development, it includes skill building, it includes helping you take decisions, it includes problem solving, it includes communication. Now, all of these activities are there, but we are bringing all of this together into personal development, which becomes an activity pool or activity cost pool. This is about the first identification of activity, defining of activity, whether it is service or production. This is clear. First step done. Now, determining cost drivers. Now, what I used a term earlier. What is the term I used in the previous chapter? For something similar, I use a term. If you paid attention, what is the term I used for substituting of a cost driver?
Basis.
Good, very good. Yes. Okay. In the last overhead, we're looking at basis. It could be machine hour. So here they're saying it's a cost driver. What exactly is the basis, or what exactly is the cost driver? This is very important. Many a time this could be obvious in the question. If not, as I said, in the material which we are given, if you find time, just go through that. Here, it could be machine hours, it could be labor hours. Okay. Select the cost driver, which is measurable and reflects the consumption of resources. So here, what is happening is you're first consolidating all the costs together and redistributing it based on a basis, which is called the cost driver. So activity cost pool stacks all the costs together. And using a basis, which is a cost driver, we are reallocating all the cost reallocating all the overheads so that the correct amount of cost gets absorbed to that particular costing activity, right? Now the terms are making sense. How do you absorb cost for an activity? So expectation is that there could be a question mixing both absorption method or absorption type of costing in activity-based costing is what we're looking. Okay. Done. Now assigning costs to activity cost pool. Once you gather cost data, overhead cost related to each activity, you assign it based on the basis of the cost driver. Calculating activity rate. Now earlier I just told you machine hour rate. Machine hour rate. Now in the similar line, if I ask you activity rate, what could be the formula for activity rate?
Activity cost divided by the number of times the activity is being held.
No, how do you simplify it?
Cost, activity cost divided by cost.
See, if you want to make it more clear, if you use the one total activity cost pool. Okay, total activity cost pool by total activity cost driver units. Right, total cost pool by units. Then you'll get the activity rate. Activity rate is per unit, right? So this is the activity rate. Next, assigning cost to products or service. Identify the quantity of cost driver and assign the cost. And this is where it gets interesting. Analyzing results. Now I told you, in traditional costing, there is no question of analysis of results and all. Here, you're analyzing results. Now, one other thing is, what are the cost saving opportunities? For example, a question could be, these are the 3 activities. It could be something like product 1 and product 2. And each product has 3 activities, A, B, C. Now then you'll be asked to compute the total cost of activities attributable to each product. Now let's say product 1 becomes 90,000, product 2 becomes 1,20,000. But you can sell product 1, which is costing you 90,000 for 1,30,000. Now product 2, you can sell it for 1,20,000. The cost is 1,20,000, but you can sell it for 2 lakhs. In terms of costing, product 2 is costly. But even though it is costly, the profit is more in product 2. in that case, you'll decide that it makes sense to produce more of product 2, even though this is it. Let's say there's no question of profitability. Your conclusion should be something like, in the given case, the total activity cost attributable to product 2 is more, so we should identify a mechanism to reduce the cost of activities to product 2. So there could be a chance that you might be asked to analyze the results or draw a conclusion. If they ask profitability, it's simple and straightforward. If it is only cost-based analysis, you should be able to say that, okay, this particular activity 2 for product 2 is a bit higher, maybe we should bring it down, something like that. Okay, this is important for decision making. Right. Now, what are the common problem types? Basic product costing, identify activities, allocate cost driver, comparison and traditional costing. This is the other product type. And then identifying high cost activity between 3 activities. What are the high cost activity and batch level and facility level costs? Decision making problem. This is what we're looking at. Okay. Example problem framework. A company has 3 products and 4 activities: machine setup, material handling, inspection, and packaging. These are 4 activities for 3 different products. So you have to identify cost driver information, calculate activity rates, and allocate the total cost using the activity rate. There has to be a basis. Once it is done, compare the total cost or comparison. In the next page, you'll be able to understand it with a better example. Okay, move to the next page. This is the last page for this. Move to the next page. So all the steps are reasonably clear. Okay, so one is understand the problem, identify activities, determine the cost, calculate the activity rate, assign activity cost to product or service. Activity rate is equal to total activity cost pool by total number of units. Okay, yeah. Now let's look at the numbers. One example. Just go through that next page. There are 2 products, X and Y. Okay. Now, and there are 3 activities. 2 products, 3 activities. If I say 3 activities, what is the substitute name for this? For these 3 activities, we use a term: activity cost driver, activity cost pool. Okay, these are cost driver. Okay. Before we get into the cost driver, these are cost pools. Machine setup is a cost pool, inspection is a cost pool, and also packaging is a cost pool. Now, what could be cost drivers here? What could be cost driver? When I ask machine setup, what could be a cost driver?
Number of setups. The number of machine setups would be a cost driver.
Yes. For inspection?
Number of inspections performed.
Number of inspections performed, or here it is given in terms of hours. Here in terms of, for inspection, they have invested 300 hours. If it's unit, the unit is number of inspection, that is fine. It is given hours, so it becomes hours. Next, for packaging, what could be cost driver?
Number of
packaging units, right? So one is setups, the other one is hours, the other one is units. Okay, done. Now steps to solve. First is identify activities and cost drivers. Now machine setup, inspection, and packaging. So for machine setup, the cost driver is number of setups. For inspection, hours, number of units. Done. So this you have to do it very carefully in the question. So remember the steps. Identify activities and cost drivers. So write it clearly, you can get out of it. First step is what? Identifying activity, cost driver. This is the activity, this is the cost driver. You have to repopulate using the question. Activity and cost driver. Activity and cost driver. Done. Next, calculate activity rates. So how do you calculate this rate? How do you calculate this rate? We are discussing. Cost driver units. Now let's say in this case inspection. What is the rate? Rate for inspection.
Number of inspections performed.
No, in this case.
Students.
50,000 divided by 300 hours.
In this case, there is total inspection cost by man hours. In this case, 15,000 by 300. So it is rupees 50 per hour. Clear? So one is identifying activities and cost drivers. Next is calculate activity rates. Total activity cost by cost driver. So we have, it's a good example because it has different cost drivers given. Now assign cost to products. Now this is the next logical step because for each product you have to assign. So what is the basis here? Now what is the basis here for product? How do you assign? We already discussed this. What is the basis? How do you assign cost to X and Y?
The cost driver.
Absolutely. So based, let's say it has given 10 setups. Now out of 10 setups, how many setups for product X? How many setups for product Y? number of hours out of 300. So it's a simple thing, but if you elaborate and do this, you'll get very good marks. Is it clear? So in this case, product X has more costs due to more cost driver usage. So it should be efficient to reduce cost is a general conclusion. But if the profitability is also given, then you can comment based on the profitability. Is this clear? Okay. Now, based on the information, one thing which you can do is quickly go to the ICM study mat. There are 3 to 4 questions, or I would say 6 questions for overheads, activity-based costing, and ABC costing. Also, there are some questions where there are at least 5, 6 questions. There are total 12 questions, I believe. At least 5, 6 questions, which includes all the step up and all. So try to quickly solve it in 1 hour. If you solve it, you will be assured that at least you will be able to answer 10 marks. Whether it comes in the form of more than MCQs, it could be a direct question. Could be a direct question. So at least 10 marks you will be able to answer. This is clear, right? The only thing is reciprocal method. You have to be a bit more careful. And in terms of construction, the step which we identify the activity, identify the cost driver. Now allocation of the cost driver rate, and then reallocation to products, and then analysis. So 4 or 5 steps, if you write properly, you'll be done. So once this is done, you'll have. I'll tell you the next context also. Next is joint and byproducts. Okay, in joint and byproducts, most likely you'll be asked to take a decision on further processing or stopping. There's something called split off point. Okay, so do you want to move for further processing? Now, how do you decide whether to go for further processing or not? How do you decide? What is it? What is the term?
Profits.
No, how do you decide if you have to answer this? How do you decide for further processing? If it's a theory question, on what basis would you decide whether you want to go for further processing or not? What is it? Yeah, profitability. How do you? Yes. One is this is the split off point. From here, what is the incremental cost? What is the incremental cost from this process? And what is the incremental revenue? If incremental revenue is more than incremental cost, it is advisable to go with further process. The incremental cost is more, it is better to stop it here. This is about it. Now, in terms of joint costs, the different methods of apportionment. Can you quickly tell me what are the methods of apportionment for joint costs?
Physical units method, market value market value after further processing, and contribution
Margin method. So did you try all of this? Okay. So this could be also important. At least you should know what is the appropriate method in each scenario. But the question could be problems requiring decision of further processing. Now next is in terms of problems with byproducts. What do you think could be a question when the byproducts are involved? What kind of question could be asked when the byproduct is involved?
Mostly how to treat the byproduct.
Okay.
What can be the treatment benefits? Normally, byproduct can yield a equivalent value. Value. It can also be considered as a byproduct, and joint cost can also be allocated. But which are very small value, it can be used to reduce the joint cost, total cost.
Okay, fair enough. Now I'll quickly take you through this, okay? Because there are some important points in both. Then you can finish all these 3 together. Now, when it comes with the byproduct thing, you have to identify the byproduct value. Now, how do you do it? From the net realizable value, you understand what is the selling price. Net realizable value is selling price minus additional costs which are required to produce the byproducts. Then, in terms of treatment, okay, one is you can reduce or deduct the net realizable value from joint costs. Reduce the joint cost pool before allocating to main products. This is one. Or you can treat it as miscellaneous income and credit it to P&L. So either reducing it from the total cost pool or treatment of miscellaneous income. Now, this can also be used to adjust the cost of the main product. These are the various types of treatment. A question could be asked about problems involving multiple products and how do you do the comparative analysis. If this is a question asked, first is list out all the options, either selling it split off or further process, and calculate revenue for each option. Revenue at split off and revenue after further processing. Now this could be a bigger sum, but you have to clearly do this. Revenue at split off, and revenue after further processing. Now compare profit for each scenario. This is important. Revenue is not important. Profit is important. Sometimes you tend to get carried away with revenue alone, but you need to understand the incremental cost also. Then you get the profit. Done. And then summarize and recommend. You can also show the profit impact on the next steps. Okay, these are the steps which are needed in the decision making part. Next, problems requiring cost per unit allocation. Calculate total joint cost, allocate joint cost to product, divide allocate cost by using units produced, adjust for byproducts. Now, adjust for byproducts, it could be largely deducting your net realizable value from the joint cost. This is how it is. Now, contribution margin method. Can anyone explain how we do this? Contribution margin method. Did you do any problem in this?
So, in contribution margin method, first we will segregate the variable cost and the fixed cost.
Yes,
the variable cost will be apportioned based upon the physical units that are being produced.
Or NRV also.
Or
Either through physical units or NRV.
Or NRV. Whereas the fixed cost will be allocated based upon the contribution.
Right.
The ratio in which the contribution is.
Yes. And we'll finally find the profit margin. Contribution margin allocated fixed cost. Okay, this is contribution margin method. It's clear for all of you. Try to do one or two problems in this. Did you do the income statement preparation in this? You have an idea of how the income statement works here? So calculating the revenue, allocating the joint cost, subtract further processing cost, and then you will know the fixed cost, reduce it, and eventually you'll know whether it's profit or loss. So when it comes to process costing, what do you think could be the scenarios in process costing? Last topic.
When a product goes through different processes to come up with and that's the main process, and we have the most questions as material that we're giving an equivalent for units production. Based on this, some more problems.
Okay, so when it comes to process costing, there are 2-3 very, very, very important aspects, extremely important ones. One is calculation of equivalent units. How do you calculate equivalent units? Next is treatment of normal loss and abnormal loss. It is very different, right?
Yes, sir.
Treatment of normal loss, how is it different? How do you treat normal loss and abnormal loss? Yeah, please.
Normal loss is normally transferred to cost in P&L account. And normal loss it is shown in the process account itself. It is taken if it has a scrap value, it has been removed from the total cost.
No, this is about the treatment. How do you value? How do you value normal loss and how do you value abnormal loss? Valuation, this is important.
Normal loss, the rate will be given, and abnormal loss, you have to calculate the cost per unit.
Abnormal loss is treated regularly, right? As per the cost per unit, it is just a breakup of the regular cost per unit. You're not treating it very differently. So this is very, very important because if this is not done right, the whole sum will go. Normal loss is taken at its realizable value, scrap value. This is one thing. Okay. Now, what would you do with abnormal gain?
Similar to abnormal loss. When we calculate cost per unit for abnormal loss, same process.
The valuation is same like abnormal gain. Okay. In terms of the methods, you have something called FIFO method and weighted average method. Now, what is the difference in terms of
while calculating equivalent
units?
FIFO way, we have to take even the opening stock.
Yes.
In weighted average, you're not supposed to take the
opening stock. Yes. So in FIFO method, you're calculating the opening stock separately because it's first in, first out. You are calculating the opening stock separately as compared to the current production. In the weighted average, you're combining them, calculating. Simple and straightforward. Okay. Done. One more aspect of this is when there is a inter-process profit. Okay. It is rarely tested, but when there are inter-process profit, you have to add the profit margin and show transfers. It's slightly tricky. So this is something which you have to focus upon. In the last sheet, we given the format of the process account. Let's quickly go to the last sheet. So process one account, it goes to raw material, labor, overheads, to abnormal gain if any, and normal loss, abnormal loss, closing work in progress. See, most of the time, closing work in progress may not be the balancing figure. Please understand this. It is not natural for the closing work in progress to be the balancing figure all the time. Sometimes it is predetermined. So balancing figure would be abnormal loss. They won't even say that in the question. If you think there is a missing gap when you populate, if they don't say about it, it could be abnormal loss. So closing work in progress is given. You're not able to tally this. Largely, it could be a balancing figure of the abnormal loss. So that is one. Yes, it's the same thing. So even if it's not expressly mentioned, and there's one question in ICA, especially ICA material, one of the students got it wrong. There is a question about sugarcane. There is a single sentence: 100 kgs of sugarcane will only convert into 45 liters of sugarcane juice. Now, what? It's a statement, like it's a regular statement. But what does it mean? Normal loss is 55%. With one single statement, they're trying to say 100 kgs sugarcane is converted into only 55 liters. The whole sum is did right, but nothing was tallied because she missed out the statement. This is its normal loss is 65%. So watch out for that. So in the process costing also, they're given things okay very well. So in terms of calculation, you have to be very clear about what is the normal loss, what is the realizable value, how do you treat abnormal gain, how do you treat abnormal loss. So keynotes: normal loss is related to the process account at its realizable value. Abnormal loss is recorded at actual loss when it's treated like the actual cost of production. And the good units get allocated after the remaining cost, after you allocate for the remaining losses. Okay, is this clear? So do one problem which asks for all the steps. Now, first is you have to get to the equivalent cost. Until you calculate the equivalent cost and equivalent units, you may not be able to apply the next step. So the calculation of the equivalent units is very important, which is different for different processes, and equivalent unit will be different for both material and labor. You understand that, right? It may not be the same for all the three: material, labor, overhead. The equivalent unit could be effectively different. So understand this. So once we're done with the discussion, quickly go through activity-based costing, overheads, process costing, which has all the five. It talks about what exactly is the equivalent unit, how do you distribute the equivalent cost, and what is the process one account, what is process to account, abnormal gain account or abnormal loss account, which asks for all. Do one sum properly, make some mistakes, and then you will remember this. Okay. So together we're expecting. See, when a very different paper comes, we can't do anything. Otherwise, overheads with absorption costing plus activity-based costing plus joint and byproducts plus process costing together should be for 22 to 25 marks easily, and which are scoreable. Okay, this is one section. Once you complete it in the next couple of hours, we'll sit for one more discussion where we'll focus on other simpler chapters. We have cost accounting system, marginal costing, budget and budgetary control. So this is together with the weightage of 35 marks. Okay, so these are a few more chapters. So 35, 25, we're looking at 60 to 70 marks, where I'm insuring you for an unknown paper. Regular paper you can anywhere study, but we are looking at paper which you have never heard of, questions which you never solved. What if the 101 question comes? All the questions which you solved never comes. Okay, I'm good with this. So quickly solve at least two questions in each. And if you have any doubts, you can reach out to me or Nikita or we can solve it together. Okay, we'll catch up around 7 o'clock once again. Ciao.